May the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be acceptable in my sight, my Lord and Redeemer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Please be seated. Well, unfortunately for you, I still see this as a teaching time. Next Sunday, it'll taper off a bit, but I wanted to attack a bigger. Normally I go for the small sections of Scripture, but let's go for the big picture. Let me just say that we'll call it the Christian epic. Now, think of it in the Greek terms. It's usually someone who is larger than life, who saves the universe or the country or whatever, the city-state back then. And we actually have a Christian epic. We need to keep thinking big in that sense. We talk about the remnant and what's happening in the world around us. Don't think small. Think Christian epic. The chapters change from time to time, but the story is huge and will continue. But I want to take us back to one little, because I'll boil it down to one little phrase, I hope, at the end. And let's first think about each human being, you and me and everybody in here, as a project. Sort of like, you cut up the paper, what are they, certain kind of paper when you're first, second grade, and you put things together. You got a project. I remember Catherine always bringing projects home to work on. Well, we all share, really, the same project. This project is to navigate the world the best way we can. That's our project. And whether we think we have one or not, that's it. You can talk about anything else, but it boils down to, I got to make it until tomorrow morning. It's a project. We have to keep it going. We aim to do the things that make sense to us. At least I think we do. And to avoid things that don't make sense to us. We navigate the world in light of our commitments and our assumptions about the world, what is good to do and what is not good to do. We all have that. And even amongst Christians, when you have a conversation of any length, you realize you're different, because I may not agree with what you think is the best thing to do. The important thing is that we evaluate those from time to time. The assumptions by which we navigate our lives include more than what we believe. They include what we love, what we desire. I had a priest, actually, he's here in town. He checks he will periodically ask you to bring in your W-2 so he can check your income, particularly if you're in a particular school, to make sure you're paying the right amount of money in the school, et cetera, et cetera. That's a technique that seems to work for him. Maybe I'll start doing that. We'll start a school and then we'll pay for it. But the phrase that I liked, what he said was, let me look at your checkbook and I'll tell you what you love. Let me look at your checkbook and it tells me. It tells me your assumptions, what you think is good, what you don't think is good. Well, the assumptions, therefore, are important. It is not only what I think is true that will affect how I pursue my life, it is also what I most want. What do you want? Now, don't say, I don't want anything in it. Please. As human beings, we're built to want God. Sometimes we go the wrong direction. We want something else. But every human being has a want, a need. Not even a need, because needs are categorized differently. A want. What kind of person do you want to be? How do we define that? If I look at your checkbook, what does it look like? That question reveals our deepest desires. What kind of person do you want to be? It's not just kids, by the way. Don't you dare think that once you're 18 years of age, it doesn't count anymore. Like it's all over. And I've arrived. No. You still want. And you have certain objectives. And you have certain procedures. St. Augustine wrote that when it comes to our moral and spiritual well-being, what we want is actually more important than what we believe. St. Augustine, Northern Africa, 4th century, wise man. What we want is actually more important than what we believe. Quote, for when there is a question as to whether a man is good, one does not ask what he believes or what he hopes, but what he loves, what he wants. Now, he was using that to chastise one of the Roman generals at the time, but that's another matter. The root of moral and spiritual failure, Augustine thought, is that our lives are kind of disordered. Not you, though, right? We're not disordered. Everything is in its place. I've got to tell you guys, we tend to think that that's true. Ask your wife. Or ask a female friend. They'll go, no. But it's this way. Okay. And every once in a while I hear, you got this focus, but it's very narrow. And you're going in a straight line. And there's a lot of things happening around you. That's an important thing. Ladies, tell your husbands. Because we think we're doing everything perfectly right and we've got blinders on. Guys are always trained to have blinders on. And go straight forward, right out there. Our moral failures, therefore, are not a result of our loving bad things. Rather, we love good things, but we love the less important things more than the greatest things. I am more worried about making this kind of money over here, and God, I'll get to him on Sunday. It's fine. It's not that we're bad, but we aim in bad directions for many of us. Each person then is a collection of beliefs and loves. I'd like to sit down with each of you and just say, now, tell me. Don't tell me all this other stuff. Just tell me, what do you love? What do you want? Did you ever ask a child what they want? Yeah, well, it's pretty clear there. It's the most recent game or whatever that is. Actually, sometimes we don't grow out of that. But many times we do. Although we may seem to be tangled together with no conscious structure, I guarantee you that there is one. A little self-reflection on your part and on mine lead us to recognize that there's a rough order to our lives and beliefs. Certain loves take precedence over others, don't they? You will make it, if you have something in front of you, that's a game we ought to play. A nice Christian, maybe we ought to, who's a good game designer? We need to create a Christian game that has you always deal with conflict. 2 items at a time, pick one. I don't think I'd want to do that in public, but we could do it. When we experience a conflict in our beliefs and desires, you and I want resolution. We don't like this conflict. We want to resolve what's going on, get it done. How do we do that? Revising either the content of our beliefs and desires or by revising the ordering of our beliefs and desires. Either the content, well, I don't really believe that anymore, or the order of them. Well, that's not quite as important anymore. We will often change our beliefs to fit our loves. Just listen to some of the political arguments that are going on out there. The beliefs, and I don't like to use specific ones, I'm not going to argue positive or negative. It's just that it's changed. For example, in Washington we have a bill that is going to fund infrastructure. Normally we think of infrastructure as bridges and roads and things such as that. But it turns out that the new definition is that's 5% of it. 95% of it is social programs. Because that's the definition for infrastructure now. So for us, we have to be very careful. If you and I talk about infrastructure, we have to say, what do you mean? What are we talking about? I don't care what it is. God, love, family. Don't assume. And if you ever saw The Odd Couple, you saw the blackboard when that was defined. Don't ever assume that you know what's going on. One's core, you have a core identity. You may think you're kind of frazzled from day to day or whatever, but you've got a core. There's down deep inside of you, there's a core identity. It often serves as sort of this pivot point. When you get down there, you kind of figure out why you've pivoted one way or another. Deep value change will usually occur along the lines of that core identity. Not who you say you are, but who you really are. When I find that I've reversed the order of my loves, I can usually trace the change to something down deep inside of me. Many of you have already shared with me why you believe certain things, and I've heard a couple of relationships right now straight back to your youth. Something happened when you were young. That had a big effect on your core identity. And I will suggest to you, and having done a lot of research in the area in another lifetime, it is quite true that by the time you're 6 or 7 years of age, your core identity is set. It's been set by your parents and by those around you. It's very difficult. That's why we have a lot of social services and psychological services, etc. That core identity, to change your core is almost impossible. Somebody has to know how to get to that core first and change it. If you don't know how to do that, please don't play the game, because you're just playing with the outside and you can really mess somebody up. You have to go to the core. The function of one's core identity is rarely conscious, by the way. That's part of the problem. Rather, we find certain values or beliefs simply gaining or losing the grip on us. Sometimes we don't even realize why. Did you ever know someone who just all of a sudden would start crying? And you say, well, what's going on? I don't know. I have no idea why I'm crying. Well, your core does. There's something coming back to your consciousness that really is affecting you from deep inside. And please, ladies and gentlemen, if someone does that, that's not a bad thing, but it's certainly not a small thing. Pay attention to that. We will find some deeper love or some sense of who we are that is at work down inside. Our core identities are formed as we live in certain belief and value structures over time. That's why it's so important. I know the concept the village can raise the children. It takes a mother and a father to raise a child. Why? Values are not congregate things. Values are personal things. You can't get an army to train a child. You need two people to pass on values to that child. Well, each time we adapt our surface beliefs and values to our deeper ones, the deeper ones become more entrenched. Basically, your core always controls who you are. In a sense, we orient ourselves into our core identities by practicing of changing our other beliefs and values in light of them. Now, the story of Christianity, or the epic, sets forth, it fits well with things that we value, most with the kinds of people we want to be. The Christian story has the resources to ground these desires. It can explain why we have aspirations that we do. And it can show these aspirations connect to something real. Some of us, and I hear it more often now than before, is when we're talking about political issues, people honestly saying, I don't understand. Why is this happening? I don't have any. Your values are so disconnected to other individuals' values that are controlling certain things, you'll never understand. Those values, when you get core values too far apart, there's no way you can even communicate. And some of you, even in my family, but I talk to you about some members of your families, like, we don't talk much. Every time we talk, something explodes. That's the difference in core values we talked about. So, let me share where I think we really have to be. And why I keep saying, as a Christian, you've got to have a smile on your face. I'll take you back, I'm not supposed to do this, but I'll take you back to my daughter. Quote, Lord, what fools these mortals be. If you're familiar with Shakespeare, that's an interesting comedy play. There's a little fellow named Puck. He sizes up the dynamics of the human drive for love. Now, my daughter, in her professional capacity, was one of the Oberon's fairies. Now, in order to do that well, you have to be just an exceptional dancer, but you have to be able to emote. And it was the most interesting thing. She was supposed to be trying to entice Puck in this whole process, and her movements and her facial, she couldn't say a thing. But her dancing and her movements and her facial expressions and her hands, you knew she was in control of that other individual just by what she was doing. It was A Midsummer Night's Dream, if you're familiar with it. It's a delightful trip through the anxieties of romantic attachment. None of you have ever had that problem, correct? No romantic stuff. Or you lose sight of everything except the person that you're interested in. The fates of the main characters, though, in this play, are controlled by Oberon, the king of the fairies. His impulse casts spells to change their attachments, if you will, and seemingly for his own entertainment, he controls everybody through the fairies. And if you saw my daughter dance, you don't want her around you. She controls you through the fairies. The one constant feature that runs through the calamities of these characters is this your and my intense passion of wanting to be loved. You know, the funny thing about that is God has already said that I'm here to love you. You have that intense passion of wanting to be loved because God has created you that way such that He can love you in return. So all of these stories and everything else that goes on, they're nothing more than a reflection of the truth of the Christian epic. Things have not changed, have they? over years and years, more restrained in its approach in the 8th book of Aristotle, if you've ever had a chance to read it, but I recommend you do, is Nicomachean Ethics. It's a good book, if you want to read that, in which he discusses what? Friendship in ethics. He begins by acknowledging that friendship is an absolute necessity in life. I don't need any friends. Bugger. Yes, you do. Actually, you need several. If you might recall our discussions before, you may have 100 acquaintances or more, particularly if you play poker. You probably have a lot of acquaintances that you know. Then you have some friends that you maintain. And then you have good friends. And you're lying to me if you have more than 3, because you don't have the time to maintain them. If you select 3 human friends, where's God? You can only have 3. Where is He? Where is He? Well, Aristotle said he acknowledges that some friendships are based on usefulness. Those are acquaintances and pleasures. They're only incidental. He said the same thing so long ago. They're easily dissolved, right? Have you ever had, you'll have acquaintances and then all of a sudden you don't have them anymore. Nobody's hurt. Nobody's upset. It's not that you block them on Facebook and now they hate you for life, kind of thing. They're dissolved. The only last thing their usefulness to be pleasure is last. In contrast, those who wish good things to a friend for his own sake. Now this is out of the ethics. The guy didn't know, but he was pretty Christian at the time. Those who wish good things to a friend for his own sake, not yours, for his own sake are friends most of all, since they are disposed in this way towards each other because of what they are, not for any incidental reason. If you will do things for a friend and never ever expect anything in return, according to our philosopher here, that's a friend. Now, when I say that, one of the things we get upset about is that they don't talk to you, or they still don't respect you, or whatever it might be. I don't care. Your job is to, as a Christian, is to constantly give to that friend. They will eventually, believe me, God will make it happen. They will eventually respond to you. Your job is to continue, under any circumstance. Our relationships are without doubt the most essential things in our lives. Without friends, I know I've said this before and I apologize, but a long time ago when I was a freshman in college and there were no such things as ethics, and they would come around to the freshmen and say, back then, would you like to earn the minimum wage of $1.65 an hour? And we would go, sure. And then they put you in experimental situations. Nobody had to ask anybody. And if you might recall, I mentioned to you that I had volunteered for one of those. You're not very smart as a freshman in college. You think it's kind of cool. I went into an experiment where they put you in a wetsuit, they put you in a warm pool of water, they had you in a container. It was completely dark, no sound, nothing. You're floating, no gravity, and it's warm. And I thought, no problem. I lasted less than 3 minutes. And the last thing I heard is that they were rushed to get me out because I was making such hideous screams to get out of there. Relationships were completely removed. Couldn't take it. Could not take it. Well, I can take it. I'll put money on the table. Sorry, Lord, that you won't. Well, Midsummer Night's Dream and the Nicomachean Ethics suggest a fundamental question about you and me. What is it about us that makes us crave relationship? Our relationships are, without doubt, the most central aspects of our lives. Now, I want you to think about something. I'll take you back to a long time ago. You won't remember this, you're too young, but the Beatles. And they were singing. There's one song that talks about this just as well, the relationships. If you might remember, the loneliness. The Beatles sang a lot about loneliness and related topics. But the one song that really hits it is Eleanor Rigby, if you might remember that, who was buried with her name. To the isolation, this is Dickens' character, by the way. So it was kind of an interesting pickup on the Beatles' part. But if you listen to it, the wording of the song. It goes, Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream. Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Father Mackenzie, I always remember that. Father Mackenzie wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. No one was saved. All the lonely people. No relationship, no humanity. No relationship, if you will, to God. We are sad for those trapped in loneliness. That is beyond our control, but we don't have to be. The human capacity for relationship is a reflection, and I will say this to you, this entire cosmos is built on a relationship. If you studied science, what is science? The study of relationships. What is mathematics? The study of relationships. For heaven's sakes, what is music? The study of relationships. Everything related to each other to make the glory of the word or the wondrous event of the music has to do with the relationships and how we perceive them. You and I both know when somebody can't sing. I think I'm singing pretty well and I'm doing a flat and she's playing a sharp. And we're in trouble. But I hear it as the same thing. Dissonance we don't like. There's a guy studied cognitive dissonance, for those of you that are old enough to remember some of those terms as well. Well, for us, it's very, very important that we clarify those. Human relationships are related to what? And I want to take you right back to the most difficult relationship that nobody can explain, the Trinity. What is the Trinity? It's a relationship, a total giving, not taking, a total giving of the Father to the Son, Son to the Spirit to the Father. Total giving, no taking. The cosmos, the Trinity built the cosmos to be the same way. And you, in fact, have the pattern of the Trinity in your core values. That is what personal friendship is. So that Trinity, that relationship, believe me, the entire cosmos, whatever you've studied, even business, is a whole system of relationships. Everything you do is related to the original Trinity and its effect upon us. So I suggest in the future, like, I don't know, we always get upset with different things that are happening around us, that we really consider that the relationship of God to us is much more than just saying it. You are built. The cosmos is built for those relationships. Jesus pushed his followers, didn't he? In Matthew 5:43-44, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's tough, but it's the relationship. Total giving, not taking. Relationship. Finally, in the Christian epic, the big story, the central reality is a loving submission and self-giving. That's why people don't like Christians. Because we love them. They don't want to be loved. They want you to hate them so they can hate you. Did you ever notice that people are really angry? They want you to be angry too. Because if you're not angry, then their anger is worthless. I mean, all they're doing is yelling at themselves. That's not good. They want somebody to yell at and you to yell back. But you see, a giving relationship cannot let that happen. The fact that relationship plays this role in the human mind is not surprising if Christianity is true, and of course it is. After all, relationality is at the core of the universe, just like it's at the core of your heart. In this way, the Christian epic explains what it is we care most about and why we care so deeply. The entire universe was created only for you. And the core is the same core as the Trinity. May God bless you as you relate to everyone around you. In the name of the Father,